The Iranian and Lebanese capitals are now coming under new attack by Israel, and the US president is claiming to have taken out much of Iran's Navy and Air Force. But as we head into the fifth day of this conflict, there are no signs of any easing in attacks by any side. The US consulate in Dubai was targeted by 2 drones early on Wednesday as Iran continues to avenge the killing of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Iranian missiles have also hit the Al Udeid military base in Qatar, the biggest US base in the Gulf. In the past few hours, Israel has called on people in 16 villages in southern Lebanon to evacuate. It sent soldiers into southern Lebanon on Tuesday with orders to take up strategic positions. Israel is reportedly carrying out a significant strike in the Iranian city of Qom, attacking the building where the Assembly of Experts are expected to meet to choose a new supreme leader. Donald Trump, meanwhile, is claiming just about everything's been knocked out in Iran, including most of its Navy and Air Force. He claims the attacks have even killed leaders who could have taken over. In a moment, we'll be crossing to TRT World's Reza Hatami in Tehran, Mohammed Al-Qasim in Tel Aviv and Andy Roshton in Washington, D.C. But first, let's get an update from TRT World's Priyanka Navani in Beirut. Priyanka, we know that attacks are continuing to hit parts of Lebanon, and Israel has just issued new evacuation orders for residents in southern Beirut. What more can you tell us?
Oscar, there have been some really significant attacks in and around the Lebanese capital overnight. Significant not only in the death toll, there's almost a dozen people confirmed as dead. That's as rescuers continue to comb through the rubble, but also very significant in the areas that were hit. Up until now, we had seen strikes in Beirut's southern suburbs as well as, of course, across the south. Both of these places were hit a lot over the course of the last 15 months, wherein the Israelis have continued to hit Lebanon on a near daily basis, despite the fact that this ceasefire has been in place. But where we saw the Israelis hit last night, these are new areas. These are not areas wherein Hezbollah supporters, for example, are known to live. One of the areas that was hit is in Babda. It's actually quite close to the presidential palace. It was a hotel that was hit. I mean, that's significant because, of course, right now there's this massive displacement crisis across the country as hundreds of thousands of people are clamoring to find shelter or find a relative to stay with until this passes over. For the people that can afford it, they are, of course, trying to stay in hotels. And we have already heard many reports from displaced people of hotels or renters taking advantage of them, trying to get them to pay, 3 times the rent, or even refusing to rent to them because of where they're coming from. A lot of renters or hotels are saying, we don't want to risk the Israelis striking us because we have a lot of people from the Beirut southern suburbs or something. A lot of discrimination has been reported among displaced people, and this surely is only going to make things worse. We have also seen an attack in Aramoun and Sadiat, which are further areas that are not considered Hezbollah strongholds whatsoever. These are, ordinary suburbs, but also suburbs where displaced people are going to seek shelter because a lot of people don't want to go too far outside of Beirut. Obviously, people want to try to stick to the capital, try to stick to what they know. So these are 2 popular areas that people might go to seek shelter. I can hear a plane overhead. Shuhaida. Yeah, this is an aircraft. This is definitely an Israeli aircraft, and it comes as there is an evacuation order issued on Beirut's southern suburbs once again, on top of the evacuation orders that were issued. Yeah, that was just a strike. It could be the strike in Beirut's southern suburbs. As I said, an evacuation order was just issued there. This is likely Israel making good on the promise that they were going to hit the Beirut southern suburbs, as they have continued to do over the course of the last 2 days, absolutely relentlessly.
Yes, we are looking at live pictures from elsewhere in Beirut of what appears to be the aftermath of another Israeli attack, Priyanka. Tell us more, though, about this displacement crisis, because we know that Beirut is the most populated city in Lebanon. Where are people going, and what are officials doing to help those who are being forced to flee?
Sorry, Oscar, I'm just taking out my earpiece so I can get a better sense of what's going on, because we can hear a second airplane in the sky. That is to say that there could possibly be another attack right around the corner. To your question about what Lebanese officials are doing to help ease this displacement crisis, we know that they have set up shelters. There's around 60,000 people confirmed to be displaced. That is per government numbers that do not account for the number of people who are staying, for example, with relatives, and that is the majority of people. Because before we had a displacement crisis in Lebanon, we had an economic crisis that began in 2019. There was, the local currency lost some 99% of its value since then. Yeah, there are Israeli planes that continue to fly overhead pretty loud and pretty low. Wayne? Yeah, so as you said, you could see these pictures over the Beirut southern suburbs. My cameraman just confirming to me that that explosion did happen in the Beirut southern suburbs. So these shelters have been set up, but the numbers don't account for the hundreds of thousands of people displaced because they're staying with family members because of the economic crisis, which threw large swaths of the population into poverty. People are still reeling from that crisis. And I must mention to you that one of the most difficult things for a lot of displaced people about the displacement crisis, the fact that they're having to flee certain areas, such as the Beirut southern suburbs, is that means that they are also losing access to their jobs. People want to work. People don't want a government handout, even if it existed, which for the Lebanese government, I mean, they're not giving out much, let's be clear. But people want to be able to work. People want to be able to provide for their family, but that's just not an option for so many people as these Israeli attacks, as you have seen, continue to rain down, and more people are being thrown into displacement and also just into chaos, because as these strikes are hitting areas outside of the southern suburbs, outside of areas that we expect to be hit, that is only creating more of a crisis because people simply do not know where they can go.
Yes, I'm wondering if you can tell us, Priyanka, where you are in relation to where these strikes are happening, and at what point do you feel like you have to take shelter?
Right. So, Oscar, right now I'm standing in central Beirut, which is an area that has not been hit yet during this particular wave of violence. It was hit during the last war, the last full-on war between Israel and Hezbollah between September and November of 2024. It hasn't been hit this time around. And honestly, this is the place that people go to feel the most safe. Just 2 streets over is an area called Martyrs Square, which is probably the most iconic location in Beirut. A couple of kilometers down, you have places like Ain al-Muraisi and Ramnat al-Baida, which is really a seaside location that people go for, a morning walk or jog or to play volleyball or whatever it is. And right now, what you can see on all of these 3 locations that I've just mentioned is hundreds of people, if not thousands of people, sleeping in their cars or sleeping on mattresses on the bare cement because they might not have the money, as I've been describing earlier, to go anywhere else. And so they just stay where they think is the safest, which is central Beirut. For people that have been able to, for example, make it further north, they may take that option, but that's a little more complicated because people might not have any sort of understanding of the north. People might not be welcomed in certain areas. Why a lot of people also choose central Beirut is because it's not considered a sectarian location. You have people across the religious and political spectrum living here, and so people won't feel, for example, like any local militia or group of neighborhood guys is going to kick them out of this location. People feel safe here for reasons that are both external, the idea that Israel is likely not to hit this location, and also internal, the fact that nobody else is going to have a problem with them being here.
And Priyanka, elsewhere in the country, in southern Lebanon, Israel has confirmed that it's sending additional forces to that region, saying that they're taking up defensive positions and this isn't an invasion. What more can you tell us about that?
Oscar, it's important to start with the understanding that Israeli soldiers never left this country. They were meant to, following the end of that fall 2024 war. I mean, it was written into the ceasefire agreement that the Israelis had 60 days to leave. That brings us to January of 2025. I was in South Lebanon on the day that thousands of Southerners were patiently waiting, essentially, for the gates of southern Lebanon to be opened. It didn't happen on that day. The Israelis eventually delayed it to February February. And then once we got to February, it was the exact same situation in the south. They opened up some villages, they left some villages, but the Israelis remained in several positions across southern Lebanon. And that has been awful for the people of southern Lebanon. Number one, for the people that live in the villages that the Israelis are, because of course they cannot go back to them. So tens of thousands of people have not been able to return home. Some of them have not been able to return home since October 8th of 2023. So it's been this 2.5 years of essentially homelessness and displacement for them. So the Israelis did not leave in February of 2025. They continued to maintain their positions. And what happened yesterday is an expanded deployment of Israeli soldiers. It's not only those 5 positions, and it's not only the amount of people, the amount of soldiers that were already there. The Israelis have put more soldiers in, and they are taking up more positions. So many that the Lebanese army has actually evacuated many of their positions, fearing that the Israelis are going to approach them. And we have seen some sort of clashes between the Israeli army and the Lebanese army before, not to the extent that we're seeing any face-to-face fighting, because the Lebanese army does not have the ability to do that. The Lebanese cabinet decision has prevented them from facing the Israelis. But we certainly have seen Lebanese army positions come under fire by the Israelis, so that's something that the Lebanese government is trying to prevent from happening. But it is to say that right now the Israelis have a pretty easy go into southern Lebanon. We have seen Hezbollah fire at some of the Israeli positions, but that's as Hezbollah security and military activities have been banned in the country by the Lebanese government. So it is an incredibly complicated and precarious situation in South Lebanon. Everybody, though, worried about this idea of a further ground invasion, and I think even more than that, an extended occupation of southern Lebanon. The Israelis say that they are creating a buffer zone. How big, however, that buffer zone is going to be is the big question.
Okay, Priyanka, Navani, thank you so much for bringing us the latest from Beirut, where we continue to look at live pictures of the latest strikes to hit the Lebanese capital. And as Priyanka was saying, the Israeli military has issued new evacuation orders for neighborhoods in the south of the capital.